Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the DFS show. I'm your host, Brock Seguin. We're going to be breaking down this 5-game slate for tonight. I just found out as I was going live, though, that Daily Faceoff is down, so not the best timing. But I will try to battle through this as best I can without the website at the moment. So hopefully you guys aren't trying to get on right now. I do have my tech team working on it. But yeah, feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat about tonight's slate. And I will get to them. I will kind of share some of the tools that I use to build winning lineups, showcase some of the stuff that we have on DFO as well. Unfortunately, with the site being down right now, I can't really show you the optimizer and some of the other premium features that we have, but I will do the best I can with what I've got right now. So not the best way to start the season, but hey, hockey's back. Great to have it back, and can't wait to kind of talk DFS with you guys tonight. So let's go ahead and open this up. So tonight's slate starts with Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. We got Toronto, Montreal, Tampa Bay, Chicago, Edmonton, Vancouver, Colorado, St. Louis. Pretty good slate of games in terms of offense. It's going to be ugly. Obviously, training camp was really short. It's going to be hard to find really any value or places where, players are in good spots here because we don't really know. There's so many new players, so many new on new teams, so many new line combination. Oh, Brad says the website is back up, so that is great news. I'm sure it'll take a little bit longer for me as everything comes back online, but that's great. So, anyways, with such a short training camp, it is going to be kind of hard to figure out exactly who's going to be the great plays on such a nice slate tonight. Favorite goalie on FanDuel tonight. I don't play FanDuel, so I'm not exactly sure on their pricing. But if you look at my goalies tab here, win probability is brought to you by Dom Lucian of The Athletic. So thanks for that. Obviously, Vasilevsky is the best play tonight. They should beat Chicago pretty handily. But as I break down the games, I'll kind of talk about which goalies I like. I really like Tristan Jarry, especially on DraftKings at 7,300. For the next show, I'll look up at least FanDuel prices so I know what to do there. But Tristan Jarry, I really like at 7,300. I think I really like the Flyers this year. I just don't know how they're going to come out of the gate. I mean, you've got Nolan Patrick. He has barely played in a couple of years. Oscar Lindblom barely played last year. All their line combinations right now are completely new. So I think that they could come out of the gate a little bit slowly. The Penguins on the other side, pretty veteran team. They've been together for a long time. So I think that they have the upper hand at least, to start the season here in that first game. So I do like Tristan Jarry, especially on DraftKings at 7,300. Dom's probabilities also likes the Penguins at 51.2%. Yes, Hart is too cheap as well. And I agree that Vasilevsky at that price, probably not worth playing. Although, if you look at it, a lot of, the pricing is pretty soft right now. There's a lot of value out there. And we'll dive into that a little bit more as we go here. But there is a ton of value on this slate. So let's just kind of get into this model here. So I just built this this year. It is a way to find out which 5v5 lines have the best matchups on the slate. So I break down every single line's underlying numbers and weight them against the other lines that they're going to be playing against based on how much ice time they're expected to see and how much ice time they usually see against that specific line in that matchup. I use all the historical data from these teams' previous matchups. So you can see all of these here. So for example, Philadelphia, when they're on home ice, often 61% of the time, Sean Couturier's line goes up against Sidney Crosby's line. As you know, Sean Couturier's line typically pretty good defensively, so that definitely hurts Sidney Crosby's line's projection in this slate. Here I've got every single line's numbers over the season. So as I go through this, I'll keep referring back to these and trying to find the best spots. But going back to the model here for a second, I've got Edmonton 2 coming out on top. And they're a great stack tonight. Obviously, you've got Dominic Cahoon, new to the team, playing with Leon Draisaitl and Kyler Yamamoto. That was a great line last year with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins on the other wing. But Cahoon should step in, fill in nicely. And they've got just a terrific matchup tonight. As I mentioned, they're going to be seeing primarily Vancouver 2 and Vancouver 3 in this matchup. And if you look here, Vancouver 2, Vancouver 3, not the best at shutting down the opposing team, give up a ton of scoring chances. Against their expected goals against is extremely high. Braden Holtby, Thatcher Demko, not really sure who starts that game. But either way, I really think that Edmonton 2 is in a great spot. You've got Draisaitl. He's not overly expensive. I believe he's the fourth most expensive center on the slate, which isn't bad at all. So I really like Edmonton 2 tonight. I think they're in a terrific spot. I wouldn't shy away from a potential Edmonton power play stack as well. You've got McDavid up there, obviously 8,400, but the pricing is so soft across. There's so much value on this slate that I wouldn't hesitate to maybe go with an Edmonton power play stack. You can get after you can slam in Matthews, you can slam in McKinnon if you want to. Ray Rock says he likes Philly 3 all on power play 2. Yeah, they're in an okay spot. I don't, like I said, I don't love Nolan Patrick playing his first game in forever. So I'm probably going to not go there tonight. I do like Nolan Patrick. I'm happy that he's back. I think that line can be a really good third line for them this season. I just don't think that I'm going to go there the first night of the season. I think there's better spots, better value. Yeah, it's McDavid's birthday. Yep, that's obviously a huge thing. I think it's also Ivan Provorov's birthday, if I saw correctly. So if you want to play that narrative, those two are definitely in play. But going back to the model here for a second, we've got obviously Montreal 1 that pops off. They're always going to kind of pop off when you're looking at the underlying metrics. For whatever reason, they're terrific at generating scoring chances. They do put up a lot of points. It's just not something that I'm always going to go after. They are pretty good priced. I think, Gallagher is a pretty good one-off play. Toronto, obviously not the most stout defensive team. I think Gallagher is a pretty good cash game play. Always has terrific shot volume. So I really like Gallagher 6,300, but the line as a whole doesn't do a whole lot for me. Do we see a high-paced game between Montreal and Toronto? Honestly, it's so tough to project what's going to happen the first night of the season. I would assume so. Toronto usually plays at a pretty quick pace. Montreal, they're going to be a really fun team to watch this year too. I think they've added so many pieces that they're going to be much better. They're going to be improved. I really like Josh Anderson on that second line. I think Nick Suzuki's in for a pretty big year. Tyler Toffoli on the third line, that could only spell good things for Kotkaniemi this year. So I think that'll probably be one of the higher paced games on the slate. I think the other one will be Edmonton and Vancouver. Those are probably going to be the two highest paced games. Obviously, Tampa Bay and Chicago, that's going to be a place that a lot of people are going to go. I think Tampa Bay is obviously going to be pretty chalky. Chicago has nobody pretty much. Taves is out, Kirby Dach's out, Malcolm Subban gets the start. So I think that this is a good spot, obviously, for Tampa Bay. You've got Palat, Point, and Stamkos in a pretty good matchup. They should see a lot of I believe, the Strome Kane line, which is obviously a really good spot. So yeah, they're going to see a bunch of the Strome line 35% of the time. And when you look back at last year, that Strome line was just absolutely terrible. Defensively, when he's with Kane and DeBrincat, giving up 33 scoring chances against per 60. So Tampa Bay 1 obviously in a terrific spot. What is the monthly cost for the optimizer and premium? So you can sign up if you guys want to try right now. You can start just weekly if you want to just give it a shot at $9.99, bumps up to $19.99 if you want to sign up for the whole month. So pretty good. All this information will be available on the premium side of the website, in addition to the optimizer. So it makes it super easy to kind of go in, find who my top stacks of the night are, and then build lineups really quickly using the optimizer. Thornton and Simmons are pretty good at pacing themselves. Yeah, I don't really love either one of those plays. I mean, Thornton just doesn't shoot enough for DraftKings, but he is playing with Marner and Matthews. That can't be a bad thing. He is on power play 1 right now, so that's obviously really good. Going back to this thing here for a second, Hoglander is basically free. Yes, I agree. 2,900. He's a free spot tonight for the most part. With JT Miller out, that really zaps a lot of the potential for Vancouver 1 for me. Their underlying numbers go down considerably without JT Miller, so I don't like Vancouver 1 as much. I don't love the Horvat line either. I think that they'll probably get caved in pretty good, but Hoglander at 2,900, he's extremely talented, and he is filling in for JT Miller on power play 1. At least that's what they did in practice yesterday. So Hoglander at 2,900 playing on that top power play unit. Really good value tonight. The other one I really like is, where did he go? is Mike Hoffman at 3,200. Obviously, I'm not really sure what DraftKings was doing there when they put out their pricing. I'm assuming that it was just kind of because he was a late signing or whatever. But Mike Hoffman, obviously in a terrific spot, playing on the second line with Robert Thomas and Jaden Schwartz. I really like St. Louis 2 tonight because, Hoffman is on the power play. Power play 1, got an amazing shot. So I like maybe a little Hoffman Schwartz mini stack put in potentially with Torrey Krug on that power play. I think that they're in a fairly nice spot. Colorado, I would assume Colorado probably wins that game. I think a lot of people are gonna play Colorado. They're the real trendy team of the offseason. So I think that a lot of people are gonna go towards Colorado, and I think playing St. Louis is a good way to kind of get off that. I think Hoffman at 3,200 will probably be pretty chalky. I mean, he's a guy that shoots a ton, but you almost have to play him at that price. Shoots a ton, power play 1, top 6 minutes, should see a lot. The thing is that St. Louis 1 is probably going to see a lot of Colorado 2, which is the Kadri line, Kadri, Saad, and Landeskog. I don't know how you're going to score against that line. I mean, all 3 of those guys are so good defensively. They might not generate a ton of offense, but they're going to be impossible to score against. And St. Louis's top line isn't a line that really generates too much. So going up against Colorado 2, I really don't like them at all. I think that opens up St. Louis 2 a little bit. They should see more of the McKinnon line. And obviously the McKinnon line is pretty good offensively, but defensively, the same can't be said. 29 scoring chances against per 60, 2.76 expected goals against. So the McKinnon line is a line that, will produce a lot of offense, but also will give up a lot, especially with Burakovsky on the top line instead of Landeskog. So I think that St. Louis 2 is in a pretty good spot tonight. Most likely value to bust. I think it's potentially Hoglander at 2,900. It is, he's making his debut, but he's playing on a pretty good line. So I think he's in a good spot. There's so much value. I really like Yamamoto on the top line, but he could potentially bust if that line doesn't score a goal because he doesn't shoot a lot. So that, power play 1 Yamamoto is great. I don't think it's going to last very long. So getting him while he's on PP1 at 3,900, that's a really good spot. Other than that, I think people will chase Virtanen, playing with Pettersson and Besser, replacing JT Miller. They've already said they're not 100% that that's going to happen. Travis Green would not commit to that. So if he ends up pulling Virtanen after a couple shifts, he is not going to be a very strong play. I think probably Virtanen. He's just never really excelled in that spot before, and he's kind of just been practicing on the third line this entire time and then kind of gets thrust back into that role. I'm not a huge fan of Vancouver 1, as I mentioned, and I'm not a huge fan of Virtanen tonight. So let's talk a little bit about the goaltenders again. I really like Tristan Jarry, 7,300. I think that's a great price. I think that this is going to be a pretty tightly contested game. I have a slight lean towards the Penguins, so I do like Tristan Jarry. Josh, big fan. Thank you very much. Anderson is just a little bit too expensive for me. I do think that Toronto probably wins that game, but like I said, it's hard on the first night of the season. Montreal is much better. We don't really know how good they're going to be, so I would probably steer clear of Anderson, although you are going to get a lot of save equity with him because Toronto does give up a lot of shots. If you have the room, I think obviously Vasilevsky is a really strong play. Chicago still does generate a lot of shots. At least they did last year. It remains to be seen just how many. How much offense is going to be zapped without Doc and Taves? I would assume quite a bit, but Vasilevsky should be, a guaranteed win tonight. Although I was reading this afternoon that defending champions don't always fare that great on opening night, but I mean, that's just kind of a noisy stat. When you're playing against Malcolm Subban, I think Vasilevsky is obviously in a terrific spot. I don't have a lot of interest in playing either goalie for Edmonton or Vancouver. I think it's just going to be too high scoring of a game, so I'm not really going there. Grubauer is obviously a pretty solid play, but St. Louis is really good. So I don't love Grubauer, especially at 8,200. I have a little bit more interest in Binnington. Should see a lot of shots tonight. And they're such a good team in their own right that I think that they could definitely go into Colorado and steal one at 7,200. But if you're going to go down to 7,200 Binnington, I have a little bit more interest in playing Jarry for just $100 more. Is it a large downgrade without Miller on Vancouver 1? Yes. Like, obviously, I still like Pedersen. There's lots of reasons to like Pedersen. Vancouver, one, is going to see a lot of the McDavid line, and McDavid's line, not very good defensively. Gets a bump defensively with Nugent Hopkins on that line, but they still give up their fair share of shots. 25 scoring chances against per 60. It's just the fact that Vancouver one's offensive output drops considerably without Miller, defensive output as well. So having Virtanen replace them, it downgrades them quite a bit. But obviously, I think that Pedersen and Besser are still in play. I just don't love them. There's a lot better options on the slate. Pedersen and Besser will definitely have their day. It's just probably not going to be tonight. The other matchup that's really interesting to me is actually Chicago one. They're just so cheap. They have, Strome is only 3,100. DeBrincat's 4,200. I think DeBrincat is a terrific play at 4,200. Another guy with tons of shot volume. Him and Hoffman should be really, really good in cash tonight. I don't play a ton of cash, but if I were to, I would definitely be looking at DeBrincat and Hoffman tonight at those, basement prices. I think they're two guys that are definitely strong plays at that price. DeBrincat, Strome did have success with Kane in the past. It's obviously not a great matchup with the Lightning. They are going to see a lot of the top six in Tampa. The second line gives up a little bit of offense to Cirelli's line, but overall they're not great. They're not too bad defensively. Obviously, the third line is terrific defensively. Ever since they got Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow, they've been outstanding. I think it's just a spot that the price kind of makes sense for Chicago one. Kane can go off on any single night, and if they score a couple goals, DeBrincat, Strome, and Kane are the most likely to do that because the rest of their lineup is not looking very good. You got Pius Suter coming over. I don't really know what he's going to do on the second line. Lucas Wallmark in the third line. Nothing there. So if anyone's going to score for Chicago, it's got to be that top line. So I really think that they're in a pretty good spot at that price. I just want to talk about defensemen for a minute. I haven't had a chance to update my defenseman sheet, but if you are going to look defenseman, I think that Torrey Krug is pretty nice at 5,200 if you're going to go, with, like I said earlier, with St. Louis 2, with Mike Hoffman. I think the best D play tonight is Tyson Barrie, 4,400. I think that's ridiculously cheap for Tyson Barrie. I think a lot of that has to do with last season. Obviously not the great numbers that we've been accustomed to seeing from Tyson Barrie, but now he goes to the top power play in Edmonton. That was the best in the league last year. No Clefbaum. He's got no real threat of anybody taking him off that top power play. So especially if you're playing Edmonton 2, which is my top stack of the night, Barrie makes a ton of sense at 4,400 on DraftKings. Just too cheap. I would expect that price to go up in the coming week, so I would get on Barrie at 4,400. I also really like Ethan Bear at 3,300. Not a guy that sees a lot of power play time, but he's also a guy that plays a ton of minutes with that top six. He goes out and plays with McDavid. I think him and Nurse played with McDavid a ton last year at even strength. So he's a guy that will block some shots, can provide some offense. Then when he's on the ice with Edmonton's top lines, as much as he is, he can pick up the rare assist or two. So I really like Ethan Bear at 3,300. As the show continues and goes on throughout the weeks, you always kind of fall in love with these certain cheap defensemen. And each year, some new ones kind of emerge as favorites. Ethan Bear was a favorite of mine last year. Remains really cheap to start this season, so I really like Ethan Bear at 3,300. Who else is up? I think that Travis Sanheim, he's only like 3,400, I believe. 3,800. He's another guy that I went to a lot last year. I think he's in a good spot. He should be out there a ton tonight against the Crosby Malkin lines, trying to slow them down. So, lots of potential for block shots for him. Also a guy that is not afraid to throw the puck on net. So if you're looking for cheap defensemen, those are two of my favorite tonight. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to fire away. Obviously, each day I'm going to try to keep this show, relatively short, in and around 45 minutes. So as the slates get bigger, tomorrow I think we have an 11 gamer. We're gonna have to not really be able to break them down game by game quite as much. Top contrarian play of the day. That is interesting. to me, I had mentioned Chicago. I think Chicago is one of my favorites, just because of the price. I don't think that they're going to see too much ownership. I think DeBrincat will in cash. I also St. Louis too is probably my favorite. Like I said, I think a lot of people are going to be on Colorado tonight, or the other games. I really don't know how much ownership that last game is going to see. Because you've got Toronto in a really good spot against Montreal. Montreal is in a pretty good spot against Toronto. And then the Edmonton Vancouver game should soak up a lot of ownership as well. So I really like that late game. I think Colorado is obviously a strong play. I just don't think that this is the night to play Colorado. They are really expensive still. In a night where there's so much value, I think that you can build a really balanced lineup without having to get too punty, which Colorado 1 will force you to do. So I really like St. Louis 2, probably my favorite contrarian play. Weber, Petrie in play. Toronto gives up a ton of DMA points. Yeah, Weber's always in play for me. He is a guy that shoots a ton, blocks a ton of shots. So Weber, definitely a guy that's in play for me. Top power play as well. Looks like daily faceoff is back up, so that's great. Let's go ahead and look at Montreal here for a second. I think it's going to be tough with Anderson, Toffoli to kind of gauge just how good either one of these lines are going to be. I think Nick Suzuki, Drouin is pretty solid with Anderson. But yeah, if you're going to play anybody from Montreal, I think Weber's a guy. He's somebody that, maybe a little mini stack, Suzuki, Drouin with Weber on that top power play. It's a pretty good spot. Is it too early for a cup final prediction? Of course, but everybody else is doing it. I didn't do one this year. I didn't, a little too busy with all the writing and stuff to really delve into it. But I think Colorado obviously looks outstanding. They've been a popular pick this offseason. So I think that Colorado is really good. But you know what? If I had to pick somebody, I think I'm going to still lean towards Vegas. They've been a team that I've liked for a couple of years. And adding Pietrangelo is just going to make them that much more dangerous. So if I had to pick somebody today, I would go Vegas just to get a little different, because everybody's picking Colorado. Their defense is so good that they're only going to play 5 defensemen tomorrow. They added Pietrangelo, and they're like, we don't even need 6 defensemen. We want all of them to kind of get into it and play a bunch, so we're going to play 5 tomorrow. That's how confident they are in their blue line. So, yeah, I would go Vegas. But yeah, so let's just take a look here again. Edmonton 1, my top play. Montreal 2 grades out really well. If you become a premium subscriber, you're going to find that that they are going to grade out really well almost every single night. They're just so good. Their underlying numbers are so good. They just don't really have that sharp shooter to convert goals at such a high clip compared to, maybe Edmonton 1, Edmonton 2. Obviously, McDavid's line's in play. I never play Cassian, so with as much other value as there is on this slate, I am not going to play Cassian tonight, but I do have interest in Nugent Hopkins and McDavid. I think that they are in a really good spot. But I do like Edmonton 2 a little bit more, but I would go with, I don't mind a power play stack tonight at all. If you're making a lot of lineups, I think that making an Edmonton power play stack is always a good play. Crosby and Gensel is another nice mini stack. I have no interest in playing Evan Rodriguez. I think this will be a pretty good line once they get Kasperi Kapanen, but no interest in Rodriguez whatsoever. But Gensel at 6,500 and Crosby at 7,400. That's extremely cheap. They grade out extremely well as well. So they're going to be seeing a lot of the Couturier line, but Couturier's line, for winning the Selke last year, they do still give up their fair share of offense. 2.56 expected goals against last year, 12 high danger chances. So this is still a spot for a line that generates as much scoring chances as Crosby line does. I think that they're still in a pretty good spot, even though the matchup doesn't look great. So if people are going to fade Pittsburgh 1 because they're worried about the Couturier matchup, I think that's a pretty good contrarian play. I think that they're in a fine spot. Like I said, I really like Yari, so I think that Pittsburgh's going to win this game tonight. So, if they're going to win, they're going to have to score some goals, and I think Pittsburgh 1's a pretty good spot for it to come from. If you look at Pittsburgh 2, I think Zucker's a guy that's pretty reasonably placed at 4,300. Rust 5,600. He's going to fluctuate a ton this year. It remains to be seen if he'll be able to come up with as good of a year as he had last year. But again, they're in a pretty nice spot. They're expected to see a lot of the third line, which is Nolan Patrick's line. I think that's definitely a matchup that they can win. Nolan Patrick's line giving up about 27 scoring chances against per 60. Again, all of this data right now is historical. Just because obviously, we haven't seen Patrick play in a while, so we don't know 100% If he comes back and he's much better defensively, then obviously that's going to zap some of Pittsburgh two's potential tonight. Ray Rock, he does have Gritty in his picture. He thinks Pitt's going to get smoked tonight. They play so bad when they're healthy. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong there. They seem to, for whatever reason, play better when like Crosby's injured and Malkin plays 25 minutes a night, and they come into this year pretty healthy. But yeah, yes, I know Patrick didn't play last year, but all these numbers are historical. So it's going back to 2 years ago. So yeah, it doesn't might not totally accurately reflect what he's going to do this year, but it's all we've got for now to kind of go off of. Petrie versus Barry is tough on DK. To me, I think that Barry is the much better play, just because that power play is so dominant. Petrie's fine, but if you look at who he's on the power play with, he's with Weber, he's with Suzuki, he's with Drouin, but he's not with McDavid, he's not with Draisaitl. So he's obviously going to play more minutes at 5v5. Barry's on the third pair, he's with Slater Cuckoo. So he's not going to see a ton of 5v5 ice time, but when he does, he's going to be, starting in the offensive zone quite a bit, and he's going to be on that top power play unit. So I really like Barry tonight. A slight lean over Jeff Petrie for me. I do like Shea Weber though. If you are going to play a Montreal defenseman, some of the other defensemen that are out there, I don't have there. A lot of these guys seem to be pretty overpriced. One guy that if you are going to play Vancouver, obviously Quinn Hughes is in play. He's pretty cheap at 5,100. Not a guy that shoots a lot or scores a lot of goals, but he'll be out there on the top power play unit. Can definitely pick up some points. Tony says, thanks. Love the podcast. Thank you very much, Tony. Thanks for showing up. If you guys have any more questions, I'll try to get to them quick here. If not, that pretty much does it for the first DFS show. As I said, as I get better at this, this is the first time I've ever done this. If you guys have anything you want to say, some constructive criticism, I'm willing to hear it. As I said, I'm going to continue to expand the tools and the things that I can show you guys when I'm doing this show. But for now, this is kind of all I got as we get going. And each day is going to get better. Each day I'm going to have a little bit more in terms of tools. Obviously, tomorrow on 11-game slate, there's a ton to break down. So if you guys have any other questions before I go, that'd be great. I will take any. Even if they're season-long questions, that's completely fine. I guess the one thing I can talk about quickly, obviously, we didn't touch on Tampa Bay too much. I really think that point at 7,000 and Stamkos at 7,400 are strong plays. I think a lot of people might they're still going to be chalky because they're playing Chicago and Malcolm Subban starting. But I think a lot of people, there's so much talk about how they're going to struggle without Kucherov. And I don't think people realize just how good Stamkos is. I think people are kind of forgetting that when he was healthy, he was outstanding. So him coming back, he scored in his only game in the playoffs and he played 5 minutes and was on one leg. So if he can do that now that he's healthy, I think that he's in a good spot. And, they should just crush Chicago tonight. If you look at Dom's probabilities, 68% probability win rate. They're minus 250 in Vegas, so they should just destroy Chicago tonight. Malcolm Subban is a guy who has a sub 900 save percentage throughout his career, so that is a game that I'm definitely going to have some exposure to. I think you'd be kind of crazy not to. Biggest chalk of the night. I want to say Tampa. But I think that people are a little worried about Kucherov. I think obviously Vasilevsky's going to be massively popular. I also think Toronto 1 is going to soak up a ton of ownership tonight. All these Leafs fans are going to be excited for the season to be back. Can't wait to play Marner. I think that Joe Thornton is going to be pretty popular tonight just because of where he is in the lineup, playing on power play 1. I think he's another defenseman or value that could bust. Hedman is top D man of the night, but it's expensive. Yeah. He's obviously terrific. I think that, they're going to soak up a bunch of ownership. And I think if you don't have at least a little bit of exposure to them, it could be a crusher because, they could go out and absolutely destroy Chicago. But again, it is going to be a weird night. Obviously, these guys haven't played in months. They've only had 2 weeks to get ready. I think it's going to be extremely sloppy tonight. Hopefully that creates a lot of opportunities. But you know what, hockey, you kind of just got to find the best matchups, and that's what we're trying to do. So, the chalk isn't like it is in NFL or NBA, where everybody flocks to the same players. Hockey's usually a little bit different. But I mean, obviously, when you see a guy like Malcolm Subban starting, I think a lot of people are going to play Tampa Bay. So I would have a little bit of exposure to them, but I wouldn't go too crazy. If we want to talk, obviously, where are they? Tampa Bay 2. If you don't want to pay all the way up for the second line, extremely cheap. But Matthew Joseph on the second line instead of Tyler Johnson, because Johnson is on the taxi squad right now. So that's going to kind of zap any of their upside. I mean, Cirelli is a great player at 44,000. He's a good play, but I just don't think that this line is going to generate too much offense. They were really bad offensively last year and really good defensively. So that's not a line I'm looking to play. Tampa Bay 3. They're fine. Blake Coleman shoots a bunch, but they don't play enough. So if you're going to go Tampa, you kind of just go all in on that top line, play Hedman, and then just hope that they absolutely destroy them. So, which is for sure a possibility. So if you guys have any other questions, Ray Rock again thinks that Toronto is going to lose to Montreal. Price is a great play. Yeah, I think that Price is a pretty strong play. The Toronto Montreal games are usually pretty tightly contested. Montreal, again, much improved this year. If Deneau's line can do a good job against Matthews and Tavares, or Matthews and Marner, as much as he's out there against them, it's going to be up to Price to kind of shut down the rest of the Leafs team. I think that's going to be a close game. I think that's going to be like 4-3, one way or the other. So there's definitely some value on both sides. Do I have a favorite GPP stack build? I.e. 3-3-1-1, 4-3-1. Honestly, it all depends on the night. The one thing I usually do is pair both my defensemen with my two main stacks, and then one with a one-off. So a 3-3-1. Usually 1-1 is how I would go normally, but it all depends on the night. The guy who used to do the show back in the day, Josh, he kind of padded the Josh stack where you go, 6 players from one team. I think that like onslaught stack is something that I like to do as well, especially in a nice spot. I think somebody like Tampa Bay is a spot to do that tonight, and just hope that they win 7-0. I'm never afraid to go with the Josh stack. But yeah, typically, I like to pair at least 2 players together with a defenseman, and then same on the other side, and then a couple punts that shoot a bunch. So tonight, those one-offs for me are guys like Mike Hoffman, guys like I can't remember his name right now. DeBrincat, sorry. So 2 guys like that shoot a bunch. Sometimes, you can punt the defenseman, somebody that's super cheap that lets you cram in a bunch of other spots. So somebody like that. Tonight is Ethan Bear. It lets you really cram in a bunch of the other high-priced options. So we're coming up on 40 minutes here. Doesn't look like there's too many other questions. Again, it's kind of the first time I've ever done this live show. So if you guys have anything to offer in terms of constructive criticism, I'm willing to hear it. Again, obviously, I've only got 45 minutes to do this show every single day. When it's at 7 o'clock, I plan on going live at around 5. Give you guys about 45 minutes to an hour to break down the game, answer any of your questions. But if you didn't get to the live show, or you didn't get a question in here at the end of the show and you have questions, just fire them to me on Twitter at Daily Faceoff on Twitter, and I'll be happy to answer them there as well. But anyways, this is the end of the first DFO DFS show of the 2021 season. So happy that hockey's back. Hope you guys also so happy that my website's back up. Hope you guys enjoyed the first show. Can't wait to see you guys back here tomorrow for a massive 11-game slate. So enjoy the return of hockey, and we'll see you guys back here tomorrow.